Hello and welcome to my side of the laundry room live. My name's Rob.
And I'm Chris.
And we want to talk about what our first comics were, or first exposure. I mean, it's very two separate generations of my life, where I was always around comics, but then you get to that point where you start buying for yourself. Not to say that's 5th grade, but what I'm going to say for some of mine were from this, like found my uncle's comics.
Oh yeah,
that kind of thing.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
Ones that stood out in that.
Sure. Oh sure. That lucky cachet that we all tend to find, and I think it's important for both of us. There are two probably big milestones in our life. The first time you see Star Wars.
Yes.
Okay. And the first time you start reading comics, or you label yourself, I'm a comic collector, whatever you wish to refer to.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think without comics, I wouldn't have been led down the paths that we were led, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
As far as creativity and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. Creativity, and then the advent of it opening other doorways for you. I always feel that way. I think comics led to other avenues of interest.
It's that whole displacement of reality that you accept.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And that's where it comes down to. Some people are too much of a realist and they can't get their head around that, so they just dismiss it.
And I think also there are people out there who just do not like the medium.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's fair.
That's
so
fair.
I understand that. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But by all means, start.
One of the first ones that pops to mind was a Boris Karloff Presents or something.
Was it a gold key?
It was, and it had, his face at the top. Presents. And what this one was a astronaut lands on a gladiatorial planet.
Ooh.
So the cover is this beautifully painted thing of this weird bipedal, huge-jawed creature with antenna.
Of course.
Beautifully painted, mind you.
Of course.
Holding this guy, and he's holding a sword. And it's like that,
Well, that's an eye catcher.
Yes.
For the 4th, 5th, whatever grader that you are, reading, looking for the
And I have to say, it's in one of my long boxes somewhere, but damn, I haven't read it in years, so I can't draw on any of the story. I remember flipping through it, and back then, it wasn't artistic word bubbles. It was just a lot of square, and it looked like somebody typed it out.
But that was the infancy of the comic too.
Right,
we didn't get the the stylized word bubbles that we have now, where everything's
like
just
now,
no, not at all.
No,
not at all.
But what was one of your first ones?
We've talked about it briefly in the past. I was a DC guy.
Yes.
I very much. Other than G.I. Joe, I think that's an important caveat, because I think we all found G.I. Joe at a relatively early age.
Yes.
Okay. And I never correlated, I never correlated G.I. Joe as Marvel. It was like G.I. Joe. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I did.
But to me, it's not like reading G.I. Joe led me to the Avengers. No, reading G.I. Joe led me to G.I. Joe Special Missions. Do you see what, you know what I mean?
I was the opposite with that, because it was an ad in one of them where Wolverine's slashing prices and he's going down a banner. Of
course, yes.
And it's like, who's that dude? So that was my bridge into
Fair enough.
X-Men, which I would say I became a collector then because I went seeking it. I saw it G.I. Joe, but it wasn't like, I need the back issues of this. It was just G.I. Joe.
Well, I'm with you on that.
I had different subscriptions at a time, and,
It wasn't until much later that I went actively searching for G.I. Joe back issues, much, much later in life.
Oh, yeah.
But, no, my first comics were Warlord. And it was
awesome.
And that was one of those books that was constantly sold at a local convenience store. It's local to our area, at least. But I grew up with a Highs, not very far from the house. Okay, and that spinner rack, for whatever reason, was DC centric.
Right.
And so it was Warlord, and what blew me away was on the cover was this very semi-armored character, which of course Warlord was, and in his left hand he's got his sword, and in his right he's got his big old 357 auto mag, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know what is this? It wasn't, it's Conan with a gun in my 7-year-old mind or whatever, you know? So,
Or later, like it's John Carter Mars,
yeah,
pretty
well,
much.
yeah, but of course, once you finally
Right,
put
right,
all that
right,
together
right.
and, you know, you get introduced to Edgar Rice Burroughs. But I remember picking up that book and same thing, you know, what, just, wow, it was like animal people in it,
Oh, yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? It was just, this is just incredible, you know? And the funny thing is you were talking about G.I. Joe leading you to Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Warlord led me to Arak, Son of Thunder.
Understandable.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was one of those books that was advertised
Right.
in the back, and I remember getting home, reading this Warlord comic, and being just blown away with everything that was happening in it. And in the back was this advertisement for Arak, Son of Thunder, like 35.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, man, next time I go to Highs, gotta find, you know, see if that's on that spinner rack. Now back then, we're talking 60 cents, 65 cents.
Yes.
So getting the money together to get a comic was, at least in my head, far easier than it is.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
nowadays,
Nowadays.
the prices nowadays are atrocious.
Oh, it is atrocious.
The quality is better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
Well, the news.
there's something about that glossy page that also is just like, to me.
It is. It's not the same. It doesn't smell the same.
It just feels like a photocopy at that point.
Correct.
You know what
correct.
I mean?
There's something about going into an old comic shop and there's a smell, and it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
This is a comic shop. There's no other smell like it.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent, but there is no other smell like it. So, but we've talked about what. I mean, so you got your Boris Karloff. What was your next evolution in comicdom?
Now, this is Black Hawk comics.
Ooh.
There were a bunch of them.
Yes, it
And
was.
I'm assuming it was an era of the 60s where it was hard-hitting stories that fuck with your head. So those I didn't quite understand, but they had cool visuals. Like one of them was some, I guess, Axis villain with a huge iron helmet, and he used a big mallet. You know, and it was like, wow.
Sergeant Blitzkrieg or something.
Whatever
right. Yeah,
it
exactly.
was,
Yeah.
you know, and he had this huge, you know,
Right.
And on the cover, of course, they always drew the villains like they were giants and the heroes cowering kind of thing. But you know, it just larger in life. That drew me into it. Yet again, it's something I probably don't even have anymore, sadly. And there was another one that it was like Pierre, like the French
Oh, okay.
soldier in Black Hawk. It's his face all sweaty. You know, that 60s staple that happened of sweaty characters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which then picked up in the 80s again with Tony Stark sweating all the time. But anyway.
That's because he was sweating the demon.
Demon in a bottle.
Yes, indeed.
But, it had him with the other characters around him calling him Lady Killer, Lady Killer. And that was a story about a female spy that he fought. But, you know, it's just like that mind-bending, weird, you know.
I do. That's the two great, really, like, historically great comic series. You know, Black Hawk was a rich, ongoing series.
Yes,
that
but
went
that
forever,
was like what
you know.
But I never equated that to DC Comics.
Okay.
There was no Batman in the ones.
Sure.
But to me, there was no DC. It was just, oh, I know it's going to be a good comic because it's got the little tiny circle at the top. That's before the big 80s DC where it was just a tiny,
Plain, yep.
like, stamp. And it's like, it got to a point when I was digging through these, or my grandmother would bring them home from yard sales or the thrift shop. You know, when I saw that little stamp, it was like,
yeah, I mean, this is good
this is
stuff.
gonna be a good
right,
one.
right. It's good stuff. So, from Black Hawk, though,
Yeah.
where did you go? You know what I mean? That's a huge, you know, you're going Boris Karloff to Black Hawk. Where was that evolution for you?
I honestly have to say, one of the very first comics that I was at it was 7-Eleven when I said, can I have this? I would say I was far from a collector, but it wasn't being... Something caught my eye where it's like, I need to purchase this.
Okay.
Before this, I had a small collection around me of beat up
Yeah, sure, we all did.
drawings in them, comics. But this was the first time, and it was a Star Wars comic.
Oh, okay.
The Marvel run. I found the cover. I mean, I don't have the book anymore. I'd love to get it just because of where it is in my mythos. But it had some yellow skinned guy with bug eyes, and he had a laser sword-esque kind of thing, and that was on the cover. Him like holding this sword up that looked kind of like a lightsaber. Could have been a lightsaber. I can't remember. And then Luke like all like perplexed looking, you know. And it was good art.
Right.
But that was it was a day of a lot of firsts. It was the first time we went to the beach.
Oh, okay.
So
It kind of.
yeah.
You gotcha.
When they had there's something I've thought about recently. The sip when they like first came out, the juice boxes.
Oh yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
Sips was one of
Yes.
them. And they had iced tea. I love
Yes.
that motherfucker.
Yes.
For some reason I was thinking about that the other day. But anyway, that
Yeah, that's fair.
was part of this. And I think we watched Temple of Doom the night before at the theater.
So it was like really like that
We
perfect
went-
dork weekend. I mean,
And
not
it
to be funny,
was,
right?
But that was here in Hanover,
Okay.
up where the movie theater used to be. There was that Value City when it was a real department store.
Yes. Okay.
So we went and saw Temple of Doom, then we went over there, and I got Temple of Doom t-shirts that goddamn I wish I still had. You know, Indy, Rip Shirt, Machete. You know, you had Short
No,
Round
Short Round,
Willie
okay,
on the
alright,
side,
alright,
like in
alright.
circles. You know, like,
Yeah.
or just him.
It's Dr.
like,
Jones.
yeah, and something that looks like a coloring book page because I would have a border in that at the bottom.
Yes.
Temple of Doom.
Yes.
And him just like with art. I
The
don't
old
think-
school.
Yes.
media
And it
shirts
was
that we
art,
had, right.
You know, that kind of looks like those original Star Wars stickers.
Yep.
You know, just a very basic art that looks good.
And picture framed. Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Very
yeah.
cool. Very
And
cool.
also, thinking of the t-shirts I wish I still had, I had these Gremlins t-shirts.
As
One
did
was
I.
red, and was in white. And we had Gremlins with Stripe, and we also had Gizmo. You know, I had different ones. Yeah. For some reason, I think about that shit, and then I'll eBay it.
Oh yeah. Well.
Dust in the wind. I mean,
Yeah, pretty
that
much.
shit's
That's-
probably long gone.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much.
But anyway.
Yeah. Very cool. That is really cool. That nice.
Maybe I'll write that as one of my summer adventures.
There you go. There you go.
But what was your next
Ah.
evolution then after that?
Oof. Well, G.I. Joe had been one of those things that was in and out. So I will say that my first G.I. Joe comic was number 5. Okay? And the big claim to fame was the infamous tank going through the city.
Yes.
And it goes in the water and all that. That was my first G.I. Joe
Yeah.
comic.
Yeah,
which I always
iconic
consider... I always consider G.I. Joe separate. I don't know why. It just doesn't... It was like, I'm a comic fan, right?
Yeah.
But I was a G.I. Joe fan first.
Oh,
Does that
yes.
make any sense?
Yes.
So, you know, but the problem became with me is once I discovered the art form, the world of comics, you know, the covers would always grab you.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
So-
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why a
And
lot of
we-
times they'd hire a separate artist just to punch up the cover a little bit.
And we got lucky in the fact that we were the last generation to buy comics where you still had word bubbles on the covers.
yes.
That is a non-existent
Yeah.
art form. It's not seen anymore. It's done. It's over with. Okay?
And half the time that shit didn't even happen in that comic. It was just a way for you to pick it up.
Pick it up. So the next book I read was this Justice League book. And what drew me to it was the fact that, and this is of course about the era of the Richard Donner films. We're not even close to Michael Keaton being Batman yet, okay? But I'm aware of these two important individuals in pop culture at whatever year old. But it was a Justice League book. And it's the old lineup when it wasn't Superman. It was Batman, Aquaman, and like one of the team leaders was Elongated Man.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's that era there. You know, it was that 83, 4, somewhere in there. Does that make sense?
That was before. Oh, what's his name? Rex, whatever. Metamorpho.
Yes.
That was before he joined, or when he was.
No,
there?
he wasn't in there.
Okay,
It was
that was later. in
It
the
was
80s.
later, but I
Okay.
mean, Firestorm was in it, so there's a snapshot of where that time frame is. Okay, and so that was kind of cool because anyway, I bought that Justice League comic and I read it, and the cool thing about it was, and I don't know why I got lucky, but it was like issue 178,
Okay.
and literally like in the back of that spinner rack that where 178 was, 179 was back there. So somehow, some way, they got reversed, whatever, okay? Because I'm sure everybody put a lot of care and thought into their spinner racks back in the day.
Yeah.
But the cool thing was, they were 75 cents or 70 cents, whatever it was. And I happened to have $2.
Nice.
So I could get both books.
Yeah, it's kismet.
Well, not only that, I felt like a collector.
Ah.
See, I had two. You know what I mean? That yes. I get the whole story, and that was cool because of sitting down and reading. So my next experience was Justice League, and that's the funny story that I have with Avengers. Yeah. So when I finally discover more about comics, I kind of looked at the Avengers as the knockoff because I saw Justice League first. You see what I'm getting? You know what I mean?
I experienced that as well because I wasn't reading any team books at the time.
Fair enough.
Well, maybe some old ones.
But that's how I rationaled it. I could buy this book here, which only had one character in it.
Oh, yeah.
And here's Justice League, and here's all these different characters.
That's the origin of Justice League in a nutshell. But that's pretty cool. But yeah, I felt the same way there because of growing up with all the JLA-inspired cartoons.
Well, that was Super Friends.
Right, but that was my exposure to that universe before really knowing my way around comics at all.
Well, see, and then it was like a year later, right? We get Superpowers.
Yes. Which was a little bit more deeper into the DC vault of characters.
Correct. And here's Firestorm being introduced on TV. Well,
no, 6 months there's a comic. Right.
Right. 6 months before that, I'm reading about Firestorm doing whatever the hell he was doing in that comic with Aquaman, and you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I know that guy. That moment, where you're inside, you know what I mean? It's just different. It's just different.
Oh, I know.
So, yes, that was kind of my brief beginnings with a humble and then, and I know you know this, I remember being excited because I got to see the first Marvel Super Special. It was Labyrinth. The magazine, the old magazines that were comics, which later on you put together that the 3-issue or 4-issue miniseries they put out when you were kids on the spinner racks were, of course, collected in the old Marvel Super Special magazines. Right. But how cool was that? They were like $2.50 or something like that, and that was like unheard of. You bought a Super Special for $2.50. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that was definitely some of my first exposure to comics right there was the adaptions.
Oh, without a doubt.
Star Wars being one of the bigger
key ones, yeah. Yep.
But I didn't get that collection until Return of the Jedi.
Same here.
And I got that actually in one of those plastic
4-packs.
Get a 4-pack, and it had all 4 of them.
I did too. I had the Return of the Jedi 4-pack. That's how I got them. Well, I bought a lot of my comics from grocery store 4-packs.
Oh, yeah.
Whitman books that were just all reprints of the old Gold Keys or what have you. You know what I mean? But a lot of that stuff is how I got my exposure to a broad sense of comics. Yeah. You know what I mean?
To me, before I knew the existence of a comic store, that was the only way you could get they were random back issues, but more exposure. You'd try to part the bag a little bit
to see what the other book was.
And I would even be like, I don't have this G.I. Joe issue. I need to get this. That was how, in a small town anyway, how we were able to get exposure, to get back issues. Because there was no comic book store for us. There was.
They existed. We just didn't know about it. Right.
When I was in 6th grade in Westminster and I heard about the comic book store for the first time, my mom took me, as soon as I got home from school, and I'm like, Docking Bay 94.
Yeah, the old one, right.
Drove me there. They were out of business. So, yes, they were there. Things may have, and then it was, I think, Reisterstown.
That was me.
That was
my first one. Now, the interesting thing for me in particular was the discovery of Reisterstown because I had family that lived in that area, and we'd drive down the main street all the time, and I kept seeing Superman. Now, yet again, our exposure as kids, Richard Donner's Superman films, those were, he was iconic at that time. And I never could correlate, why would you have Superman, you understand what I'm getting?
Oh, yeah.
On your side. What's the purpose of this? You know what I mean? And then I finally kind of, paid attention more than 30 seconds, because I was probably not sugared up that day, and realized it was cards, comics, and collect. I'm like, oh my, same like
Right.
you. I gotta stop, you know? And that's the interesting thing. The first time you realize that you're not the only one.
Hmm.
That there's actually a store, and that's all they sell is this great, beautiful thing that you love so much. You know, there's nothing else there.
Oh, yeah.
There's no clothes that I have to look at. There's no frozen food section that I have to pray to God. No, it's all comics. You know, and that's the beauty, if
Yes.
you will.
Yes. I mean, it's definitely eye-opening when you enter that.
Mm-hmm. Yet again, the smell,
Yes.
the feel.
Oh, yeah. And
You
at
know?
that time, they weren't, what's the good way to say it, reputable.
No.
So a lot of them were holes in the wall
Mhm.
because they embraced that punk
They were
attitude at the time. You
correct. You know, they're
'Cause the
supposed
guy
to open at
behind the
noon, but they didn't
counter-
open until 2.
Know? Right.
Right.
And the guy behind the counter is wearing a leather coat with anarchy buttons and dead Kennedys and stuff.
Which I knew none of. None of.
No.
You know what I mean? That was unheard of, you know, but you knew that, well, already he was cooler than you
Yes.
because
He was in that world.
he was in that world and you were still
And you wonder, oh, wow, does he stay here and read these comics? You know.
the glamour of
Oh,
the
yeah,
job, you know.
the locked in the mall fantasy you always have, you know.
You know, it's just sitting here all. But the great thing about the comic shop was getting to know the routine.
Yes.
Oh, new books come out on Friday? So if I come in here on Friday, I get the new books that are coming. Yep, they come out every Friday. Oh, okay, that's awesome.
And I gotta wait a month
Yeah.
after that, you know.
Right. But then that's the exposure. You go from reading whatever's on the spinner rack to Watchmen. You reading whatever's on the spinner rack to reading Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
Well, where did he go? Why is he returning? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know
it
what
definitely took a couple reads to really grasp.
Correct.
From, at least for me at that time, limited comic book Batman, but major Adam West exposure. So that was like a double step off a cliff. Like, what the fuck?
Okay, explaining to my parents that this comic is 75 cents.
And this one's $2.50.
And this one's $1.75.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Because, Mom, it's prestige format. What does that mean? It's better paper, Mom. See this? This is like newspaper. This is much better paper. You know, that was an interesting concept, and understanding it and having it being taught to me enough that I could pontificate to someone else that this is what's going on. But that was awesome. It was a great. We grew up in the second golden age of comics, in my opinion. There were so many great storylines that are now being, mined for movies. So those are that's interesting in and of itself. You know
what comic really got me into collecting? I'm sitting here thinking about it, and it's like, yes, X-Men was the one where it's like, I want to get this every month. But they sold it at the card and book shop.
Okay.
We go up to that grocery store every week for grocery shop, and it was nothing like, hey, I want to kill time and go over here.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Fucking Ninja Turtles. I remember Comic Scene magazine. It was one of their first issues. I opened it up, and it's got the Ninja Turtles. This is going to be a long story, but stick with me here. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? This looks awesome. I think I was in 6th grade. Wow. This right up my alley for some reason. At that time, I guess I was a furry or whatever. Animal characters would just attract me for some reason. It's like, wow, that looks awesome. I mean, I was reading Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew still at that time.
Okay.
But that's when I heard about the comic book store. Through this kid that said, oh yeah, I've read them. And he weaved this fucking tale of a Ninja Turtles that if it existed, it would be, not to take anything away from Ninja Turtles, but like Shakespeare. The shit this kid made up. In the picture, it was the 3 of them, Donnie, Leo, Raph, with Mikey in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Looks small, but it's just on a white, because comic strip was mostly black and white, but it had a few color inserts in it. But you had no depth, and it's like, yeah, he's a little one. The other 3 are the adults. His mother used to be one. And she died. And to save him, she put him in her shell and pushed him out of the way. Wow, holy shit. But then I was on a mission to get any turtle comic.
After that.
Go to the comic book store. They're closed. I don't know anything about
Right,
any
sure.
other ones in existence. I'm bummed. We go up to the card and bookshop. Do you remember that one?
140 book and card.
In the back, every once in a while, they'd have graphic novels.
Okay.
Every once in a while. Just in the back, like in their real book section.
Yeah.
You know, not the comic section.
No, I know
over
what you're
here.
talking about all the way.
So it took me a while to discover. That's where I got Lone Wolf and Cub, because they had those. But they had the Ninja Turtle First graphic novel. Remember First graphic novel company?
Yes.
Theirs, in color, book 2. I coveted this fucking thing till it fell apart. Until I could finally get to a comic book store and be like, oh my god. I mean, issue 12 was the first one that I bought.
Okay.
Outright. Because that's how long it took me to discover there is the secret world of comic book
Sure.
stores. And then coming up with the money then after that to purchase all the back. Now, that dude, his, not brother, but someone close with him, actually was one of the, like, older Boy Scouts that tutelaged my Cub Scout group.
Okay.
Or was I Boy Scouts? Either way. Was a good artist. So he drew, like, perfectly Eastman and Laird turtles.
Really?
For this kid. That's how good of an artist he was. Like if Matt would do something.
Yeah, I got you.
So, I thought this guy was the cat's ass, man. You know,
He
he
can
was,
draw, right.
well, I thought this kid having these made him then the authority. Man, it's a great story, but it was nothing like
What he was telling, right. I think Turtles, it gets underplayed. Its importance in the comic mythos is huge.
Yes.
And the reason for that is there's a reason why issue 1 is a bloody fortune. Issue 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I mean, yes, they're valuable. I'm not going to dispute any of that. But the product was oversized for the time. It did not come the standard comic size.
Correct.
And more importantly, unless you had read other independent comics, which was not a thing. That was not a thing. I mean, it really wasn't. The market was dominated by 2 publishers at that time. It was Marvel and DC, which is still pretty much the same way now.
Yeah,
but
and even a bigger company now, like Dark Horse, was an indie.
Completely.
I mean, they had Concrete
right.
and like Mad Dog or whatever, that biker dude.
And Aliens.
And Aliens was their first like
big
like,
multi, right.
Yeah.
But you had to have read other comics from Mirage, right? Or no,
yeah, they were Mirage.
Mirage. You had to read other comics from Mirage, and in those comics was a cutout coupon.
True,
but
what's weird is they are Mirage. So they would do a comic here, there, and this was all like happening within the same year. Big push, and then it's like, oh shit, and it would be like 6 months for the next issue.
Well, because their
right.
readership was whatever it was, their printing costs were whatever there were, so they would.
So yeah, it was really hard to even get the word out.
Get the word out, but more importantly, even get a comic with the coupon for the Ninja Turtles to begin with. Then taking the coupon, sending it out, and getting a copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 was never sold on the newsstand.
No.
Never. And if it was sold on the newsstand, that is because you had a dealer who literally cut 50 copies of this coupon out and sent $5-6, whatever the cost was, because it covered your shipping, and actually took the time and effort to put it on his racks or what have you. So the Turtles comic, number 1, is important because of its utter and total scarcity.
Yes.
It's just almost a non-existent book. And
like 250 of them were printed.
It's an astronomically low number that I don't even really think they have a full concept of how many actually got printed. Now, I've heard all kinds of numbers and what have you, but that is a really important book because what it did is it literally launched the entire mecca of turtledom. You know, from action figures to movies to
when honestly, you can put them on the same pedestal through recognition as Batman, Superman.
Absolutely.
Any of them.
Absolutely. No. I totally agree.
But the thing is, that Second Life, the animated show, 86 or whenever it came out. Yeah, no, later. Whatever. That's what people see as the gospel. They forgot that there was this.
It's not that they forgot. You say that.
Some don't know. I don't
That's
mean
what I'm
forgot,
saying.
but they didn't.
I think the world at large really doesn't know how deep those roots go back. To, you know what I mean? To get where when it ended up being an animated show.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, for the 80s, that's what you had to do to kind of separate yourself, because the 80s were so incredibly unique in the fact that we got to watch half-hour toy commercials.
Because
you know what I mean?
Reagan turning over the FCC rule about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but I mean,
that
Turtles stood apart from that, though. You know, there's Thundercats. There's you had to do something to separate yourself from the other 15 other shows that were on competing. You know what I mean?
But honestly, that dude that heard the news in the TV guide, it was coming, sat down after school to watch that first of the 5-part miniseries. And I think it was the first time in my life where I'm like, what is this bullshit? Because by then I'd already been cultivated.
Well, yeah, you had already known what Turtles is.
Side story, I met this dude whose father was like an antiques dealer.
Okay.
So he had a large comic book collection. He had a lot of the Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
I traded it for him.
Okay.
My Transformers comics, the Marvel ones.
Good trades.
Yeah. But it was 12 when I finally purchased my first one, but before that I had all of them.
Gotcha.
Up to that point, pretty much. Missing only issue 10? Yeah, 10.
Good trade.
Yeah, but it's just weird.
That's, you know.
I'll fill more of the story in later. Don't want to use some people's names.
I kind of think I know who it is, but that's, you know. Anyway, but comics were a major part of our lives.
Yes.
And without those first comics, we couldn't have ended up with collections in the thousands.
Correct.
And that's not any exaggeration. It's
well, not for me anymore. I've done
yes,
a lot of
you've
culling
done
over
your
the years.
yes. And I
pretty much only have kept my 80s collection.
Fair enough.
Because that's where my heart is. And that's what, I don't go to the comic book store now, but if I stumble upon a good one at a yard sale or flea market, I'll get it.
I have soft spots for certain characters, so I can relate. Trust me.
I want the Blue Devil run, Firestorm run, shit like that means something to me as a kid. Doesn't mean anything to anybody else. You can find them in quarter bins.
Well, that's all. You know, buy what you love, and eventually the market comes to you if you want to know the secret of comic.
But even if you want a market,
no, I'm just
saying.
You know
what I mean? Just saying.
Here's my best example: is Star-Lord's first appearance in a magazine type comic that was like $1, and I just like Star-Lord. This was the original Star-Lord, not the version that's now on the big screen, and just liked the character. I just thought he was cool. You know, he was kind of quirky, he was kind of weird, whatever.
Right.
And buying the magazine for $1 because nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden it's like, I'll give you $500 for that. Are you kidding me? Because that was a book that whenever I found it, I bought it because I wasn't sure how many times.
Right.
And until you get home and compare the cover, it's like, oh, you know, I would. Well, it was only $1. You know, and that's how you justified it to yourself. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
There
are definitely comics and with that, you know, where if I just see it, I'll keep buying it. G.I. Joe.
Well, yeah, I'm with you.
I have no idea how many number 1, 2s, 3s, you know, the first. But it's just $15 for number 1, take it. $10 for it, take it. And I would just fucking buy them.
And that's a great, you know, G.I. Joe number 1 is how every number 1 comic should be made. Okay? G.I. Joe number 1 was made of great paper stock. It was almost a cardboard front. But not only that, at the end of the story was a will call. And it was cutaways of what the base looked like. And it was introduction to the characters. You know, by the time you're
you had
done...
Scarlet with the crossbow with short fuse, or one of them with an apple on his head, like, oh. No, Breaker. With an apple on his head.
By the time you're done reading G.I. Joe number 1, you know right? You know everything it's going to happen. Not everything, but you're comfortable
Yes.
with the world. And the only other comic that I can think of at the time that was even close to it, okay, was Eclipse Comics, which was a subsidiary of Marvel.
Yes.
They did a comic that is, I have a soft spot. I'm the only person on earth who read it, I think. I'm pretty sure. Is Alien Legion. Alien Legion was the concept of an alien race. It was a foreign legion, but they were in space, and it was a full cast of characters of these cutthroats and villains and whatever else that had to be indentured servants to the galaxy, okay?
Yeah.
At the end of it, there was a who's who. So here's all these history backgrounds. These how #1 should be done. That is, give me a 20-page story, and then give me 10 pages of just some info.
I just had a thought when you said that with the who's who thing. The time I started getting into the X-Men comics was the official Marvel handbook was coming out.
Those were great.
That is a comic as well that when I see it, I just fucking buy it. Do I have this letter? I don't care. I want them all because that is a time capsule of our love of Marvel right there.
And
25
it's never
issues.
been reproduced again. DC
They've tried, but
DC had the Who's Who, which is another book that I'll buy just kind of on the outright.
Art, beautiful in them.
Oh yeah, Gil Kane was doing a lot of.
But the thing is, the Marvel they took from the comic.
They did.
They did have some John Byrne original, Art Adams original pictures.
Tom McFarlane.
Excuse me, the Who's Who. Those are some of the coolest pictures because you would have in the foreground a color picture of the dude, and then they would in a red outline or whatever,
or orange or green or whatever would be these
outlines was like a snapshot of
other things that were going on.
Yeah,
and those were great because, like I said, Gil Kane actually did a lot of those. And Gil Kane's one of those Silver Age artists that could draw anything, in my opinion. You know what I mean? He's a throwback to the really incredible artists. But these books were great because you could buy a book for $1.50, $2, whatever it was, and you literally had 40 characters in them, and you could read everything you wanted to know about those characters.
Yes.
And you could even, and the great thing about Marvel and DC in particular is you could find out when their first appearances were.
Yes.
So if you didn't know, like, oh, I got to get this book. I need them. Oh, yeah. And then Marvel did something, put me completely on my head. They did the Book of the Dead.
Yes.
They did 5 or 6 books where all these characters who died, and you could find out when they died. There was their first appearance and their last appearance, and it's like, oh my God, I got to read.
And in the back of the W to Z one or whatever it was, they had all the alien races.
Yes,
small little dots.
Fantastic. That was Marvel Universe. Yep.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yep. Those were great. Those were absolutely great. Great stuff.
Yes.
Great stuff. Should do it again, Marvel and DC. Anyway.
That'll never happen.
No, probably not.
I'm not even... I know first people say, yeah, they weren't PC then. And it's not even that. It's the sense of awe is gone.
Yes. Yes.
We still grew up in a time with the shticky slapstick characters. Fucking Stiltman would still be on a cover of Spectacular Spider-Man. Where it's like...
Well, we got to see the transition.
Nowadays, that's a joke character,
But we got to see the transition. We really did, because the start of the 80s was dramatically different than the end of the 80s as far as comic books. Because you still had it wasn't uncommon. Shocker's a great example of that. Shocker was a bank character. Okay, Spider-Man, literally, the only thing Shocker ever did was knock over banks. I mean, it's not like he ever tried to take over New York, you know what I mean? So he'd knock over banks. By the beginning of the 80s, Spider-Man is literally getting him, capturing him, and locking him up because he broke into another bank. And I got him, you know what I mean? By the end of the 80s, you have Venom.
Yeah.
Who's literally just trying to rip him apart.
Yeah, it went from lighthearted to...
And that was, we got to see, and literally in 10 years' time, there's probably no other generation I can think of in comic books. If you would have read a comic in 1950 and 1959, the subject matter wasn't going to change that much.
Now,
if you had read a comic from 1960 to 69, the subject matter isn't going to change that much. From 80 to 89, the subject matter changed dramatically. Everything changed.
Yes.
It really did. Because what happened in that time frame, there was 2 major landmark books. You had The Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
Which proved to the comic industry that the fans would spend more than $1
and it
for
would be
comics.
taken seriously.
And it would be taken seriously. And then it's Alan Moore's Watchmen.
Yes.
Those two books, by and large, put the entire industry on its ear. Nobody really knew how to, deal with it. And then with the success of Watchmen, brought the V for Vendetta, the import, because they were originally published in a magazine in Europe or in Britain over here, and then of course that's kind of almost gives birth to the Vertigo and all that type. So it's an interesting 80s in and of itself. If you're a comic aficionado, is an interesting decade to research because there's a lot of things that happened first in the 80s.
What I was going to say is, and I'm looking at the time, and it's like, fuck it, I'll say it.
Mm-hmm.
We were exposed in that microcosm of generation to generation slamming into each other in everything. Think about your sitcoms, your cartoons, where a pie in the fucking face on Bionic 6 was still funny.
Yeah.
What the fuck? They have bionic powers. It's a pie fight because it harkens back to the old Warner Brother cartoons we watched.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
So even in that instance, I mean, movies, a comedy then is different than now. There is more old-fashioned, for lack of a better term, comedy, shtick, pratfalls,
Mannequin and Weekend at Bernie's cannot be made today. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to be as funny.
But people are too cynical today, too, to be like,
true.
oh, look at that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Police Academy can't be remade.
No.
It can't. You know what I mean? And it shouldn't. That's not my point. That's not, what I'm getting at. But that was a different tone.
But everything,
time.
I mean...
Yeah, I agree.
If it's two fucking Super Scions or whatever they're called from Dragon Ball Z shooting each other, we were in the center of that.
We were. Well, that's why we're the most nostalgic. We're the first generation that actually got to videotape and rewatch. That's why.
And here's something before we called it night here. I would like to know from the younger generations, what are they nostalgic for? I know there's a big Nickelodeon Rugrat nostalgia, but
it's Pogs.
I mean, other than fucking that, but is there anything that they hold that emotionally gripping as we do for our cartoons and comics and toys? Well, and I mean the generation right after us, it is the Rugrats, the Rocko's Modern Life.
Oh, yes.
Ren
absolutely.
and Stimpy,
absolutely.
yes.
But my question is it's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. And why I say that is that generation has to be 30 to be, because it's the rule of 25.
That's true.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's very true,
So
yes.
you don't know. We didn't know. You know what I'm saying? We didn't know that if we went into a comic book convention at age 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, that you were going to be willing to spend $30 for a He-Man Masters of the Universe card, comic.
Right.
Or a toy. Excuse me, that's what I meant. You weren't sure that you were going to spend $100 on a Millennium Falcon that's still in the box at Empire Strikes Back. You're not, you know what I mean? Until the exposure's there, you don't know.
Understood.
You know what I mean?
I didn't take that into... Well, how about this? I'm curious to what the future will look like.
Oh, me too. I mean, insanely curious about it.
Because
I can tell you this.
There are a handful of shows with soul. Mm-hmm. And even for something as stupid as G.I. Joe, the show had soul that they don't have nowadays a lot.
Agree.
Like we've talked about Avatar and Adventure Time. And I mean the real Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
Avatar.
yeah. I think I can look at my daughter and son, and I can see what was impactful for them. So if I'm going to look at my, my magic telescope down into or across into the future, I would not be surprised if SpongeBob, Adventure Time, and Avatar are what dominate that age bracket.
And I'd be happy with that because
do you understand what I'm saying?
Those are things with SpongeBob, not so much. But
SpongeBob had incredible longevity.
It's still on.
That's what I'm saying. It has incredible longevity, and it had impact. So could I see my son, who's 14 now, showing up at my house at 30
with a SpongeBob t-shirt?
With a SpongeBob t-shirt, much like you and I are wearing what we wear.
Right.
I wouldn't be stunned at that.
Right.
You understand what that's all I'm getting at. And also probably the things that the Disney part of your life, you know. So for them, it's going to be the Cars, the Toy Story, the more of that line.
Well, you know what? That makes me feel very optimistic for it then, because I've been pretty pessimistic about it. I mean, unfortunately, my kids are at an age where they do watch some things that a lot of the Disney stuff I find.
Well, that's us doing our due diligence, though.
Well, I'm talking about the Sophia the First,
of course,
those type of shows where it's like, oh wow, but then you flip over to Cartoon Network and it's like, what the fuck is this shit? Granted, they can be the dark horse of the cartoon scene, but it's like, and this is coming from someone, I'm a fan of the new Teen Titans cartoon. I think it's funny, but yeah.
But I think that's cool. I think that's cool that you have a Teen Titans cartoon.
Yes.
Because, 15 years from now,
your
kids are going to be like, Dad, do you remember that? We watched it when I was whatever,
and Yes, I get that. But I'm just saying, a lot of people rail against the Teen Titans cartoon. I'm just saying I'm a fan of it, which people put down here. But there's shit that sucks even worse. I should say to the general public.
No disagreement. I'm not saying,
Right.
I mean, honestly, one of the things that was kind of great about both of my kids getting older was I don't have to see every piece of shit animated kids movie anymore. And that's not saying that there aren't good. I told you before. I saw Kubo and the Two Strings and loved it. I saw Moana and loved it. But for every Kubo, for every Moana is an Alvin and the Chipmunks. For every, I'm saying, or a Yogi Bear. Okay,
I never saw it, so I can't
count your blessings.
Okay.
But that's all I'm getting at.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You get to a point as a parent where it's like, is there any real humans left that are making movies? Because you see so much of it. You know what I mean? And you get burned out.
I guess to me, though, personally, and we'll leave on this point, that even without kids, if I would turn on the TV, I'm looking for animation. I just think that's the best way to tell a story, because you're not. Even in the CGI world, you're not grounded by reality.
Fair enough.
So, to every DC movie, you ain't shit compared to the JLA cartoon.
No.
JLA Unlimited.
No.
No matter what you put up on that silver screen, you will not touch that show.
No, you hit your zenith.
Yes.
You hit your zenith with that show. I agree. 100%. No argument. That is one of the finest cartoons, I think, to this day that was ever made.
That is a cartoon, and I have no qualms of saying this, would make you fucking cry.
Yes.
And then
give you goosebumps, root for the villain because he was misunderstood or whatever it was.
Because it took its time.
It did.
To just say, you know what, this episode's all about Solomon Grundy for the fuck of it. You know what I mean? And you're captivated. That's where your real talent is, Warner Brothers, in your animated departments. Get those guys to make a real movie or to write the script.
Write the script. Write the script. Because they actually understand dialogue.
That's the one thing I've never have fucking understood in the whole movie making thing. Hey, we got this great comic book written by Chris Claremont, we'll say. We just hired this dude to write the script for the movie. Fucking hire this dude. Mm-hmm. That comic was a script with your...
It's an outline.
Yes.
It's an outline.
It's got your dialogue. Yes. It's got your scenery. It's got your beats.
But more importantly, we'll use Chris Claremont, we'll use John Byrne, we'll use these great scribes that we grew up with. And I'll even go Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and, who are writers in and of themselves.
Yes.
Okay? Not only are we familiar with the story, but because of the visual medium that comics are, we're familiar with the setting. We're familiar with how it should be framed. We're familiar with... So there's nothing wrong, and I'll give Frank Miller credit for this. The Sin City movies, literally, in some cases,
yes,
book,
and that's the thing. They would show pictures from the set, and that's what script they went out of. You see them all looking at the graphic novels. No, the second one had problems, but I don't think that has anything to do.
No, but I mean but yet again, you have it. You've got the framework. You've got the storyboard work. It's all right there. Get a pair of scissors, cut out the panels, put them on the storyboard, and make it go and build it from there. Now,
and that's why I feel Watchmen is a great movie.
I agree with you.
There are some visually different things, some story beat changes.
Sure.
But god damn it, that is panel for panel.
Brilliant. It is one of the... Look, it was a brilliant comic, and they did a good job trying to bring one of the hardest subject matter comics of the last 50 years to the silver screen. They really did. You'll never understand how much... I mean, Watchmen is so important. It is so important. It is right down to its history, how it got created, from its inception to getting printed. Okay, if you don't know, you should research. It's a fascinating story.
Let me stop you there.
Sorry.
Because I'm looking at our time and it's getting crazy
You're
long.
right.
Why don't we jump right over that, and there'll be a part 2 to this episode.
Fair enough.
So, keep being rad, stay dorky. My name's Rob.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you in part 2.